I'm Valerie Wiebe, and I'm a landscape artist. And I think the reason I'm a landscape artist is because of where I live. You know, I'm surrounded by these wide prairie skies and vistas, and I'm really interested in the light, and I'm interested in how it makes you feel when you're in the landscape. So if you look at some of my paintings, there's often like a little figure in there, like just really, really small. And it's because, and it's the last thing I put into my painting. It's what makes me feel how I feel in the landscape. And it's how I want other people to feel. I want people to recognize that in this landscape, you feel like this small, right? Because it's so big, right? But also there's this sense of awe, right? And there's a sense of like looking down. So there's both looking up and looking down. And that's kind of, I think that's kind of what my work is about. And then of course the borders, well, that's an obsession with pattern. You know, I've been told I shouldn't do it, and I'm kind of like, no, I'm gonna keep doing it because it's what I like. All of my paintings are done on wood. So I paint on wood, and I have a couple of reasons for that. Partly I paint on wood because canvas has a bounce to it, which I don't like. And it has texture, which I don't like. Because I'm kind of like, if I'm gonna put texture on there, I'm gonna add it. I want it to be a nice smooth, and I want it to be a hard surface. Sometimes I also paint on paper because that's also, you know, I can put it on a hard surface and, you know. I paint mostly from life, like what I see around me. And so I take photographs, or I sort of take a mental picture. But sometimes I also paint from something in my head based on some idea, you know, or a sense of a place, or how a place makes me feel, right? So I'll do that. I paint primarily with acrylic paint and mostly fluid acrylics. So acrylics have several different versions. You have like what's called heavy body acrylics, so they're more pasty and you can do more textural things with them. But I like the smoothness of fluid acrylics. And then you have high flow acrylics, which are often used for like spraying or airbrushing and stuff like that. But it's too thin. So I sort of middle ground, you know, fluid acrylics. And then I can also do glazing with them, and I really like to layer colors over top because I like oil paints. I like the way that oil paints have a sense of depth and light coming from behind, but they take a really long time to dry. And I used to paint with oils, but that's what I love about acrylics, is because they dry really fast, and I can even speed it up by using my hair blower, you know, and I can put one layer, because I'm not very patient. When I start a painting, I came up with this idea of taking one board and adhering it to another, so that I ended up with sort of two layers, right? And then in the center I do my landscape, and then what I do is I sit and I ask my painting, what do you want? What do you need? You know, and I like, what sort of a border do you need? And when I first started doing it, I was painting the borders, and then I started doing more textural things. Yes, I added texture with using some stencils and like a modeling paste, and then adding color after. I did that for a while. And then I discovered this wood burning, which I really like. The technical word for wood burning is pyrography, and that literally means drawing with fire. And who wouldn't want to draw with fire, right? I love the smell of it. I love the feel of it. I like the heat, you know. You have to be careful not to burn yourself. But I like the whole process. Drawing with fire. And then discovering that I can actually, sometimes I can add color then to the wood burning part, you know, and I've been experimenting with that. So I say I paint with acrylics, but I do like to kind of try other things, and you know, and sometimes I'll add in collage. It depends on what I'm working on. And then I make my own frames. I get wood milled at a place in Saskatchewan, and yeah, and then I'm developing my woodworking skills, making my own frames. I mean, having my studio in my house, sometimes I think that's a blessing, but it can also be a bit of a curse because, right? I mean, it's in your house, so you're distracted by everything that you have in your house, all the things that you're doing, right? So sometimes it's hard to be consistent about having a consistent studio practice, but the older I get, the more I realize that this process of creating things is actually I'm not just making pretty stuff. This is mental health work for me. You know, like this keeps me sane, especially like through the pandemic. And so sometimes I come here first thing in the morning in my pajamas and I'm doing something in my pajamas or in various states of undress. You know, like I'm getting dressed and I'm like, oh, I just have to run into my studio and do that, right? So that happens, you know, and then Doyle will come in and he'll look at me and like, there you are in your underwear. It's like, I can't help it. I just had to come here and do it. So I do, you know. So, yeah. So I paint, I create whenever, yeah, you know, I do it because I think I do it because I have to do it. I don't know if I actually have a choice. You know, it's something that I just feel compelled. A lot of my paintings, not all of them, but a lot of them tend to be like from way up here. Like I've done quite a few where you're looking down at the landscape, right? Because because that's a different feeling from looking up at the sky, right? It's those two postures, and I'm always kind of playing with that juxtaposition of those two things. So I have been painting forever. I've always been creative, okay, let's say that. But I mean, I probably started painting in high school. So that's a few years ago. Do I have to tell you how old I am? No. But I got I do have a fine arts degree from the University of Saskatchewan. But before that, I actually have a music degree majoring in voice. I'm a classically trained singer. And I have an education degree from the U of R in arts ed. So I taught for about 7 years till I decided that sucked. Do something else, right? And then I actually have my other fine arts degree is in interior architecture and design. I did a series of paintings for a conference. They had asked me to do these backdrops. The paintings weren't that big. They were only about this big. But what they did is that they photographed them then and they blew them up and had them gigantic on the wall, right? And the 5 paintings were also part of an accompanying art show that went along with this conference. And I sold all 5 pieces even before the conference started. Those 5 paintings were the start of this series. This is called my Big Earth series. And yeah, that just sort of started it and made me realize, oh yeah, I'm onto something here. This is real. And it was like this voice of, oh, that's what my voice is. That's what I want to say, right? Yeah. And my paintings are often me trying to work something out, something that I'm thinking of and struggling. I didn't realize why I was doing it until I connected that when I was very small, I was only 2.5 or 3, I was a very busy child, not naughty, just super busy. But my father was not a patient man. And we lived out in the country and we were driving along and we had one of those VW Beetles and I was sitting in the back and I was being very loud. I'm assuming that I was being loud. And he was getting more and more frustrated. My guess is, having raised 2 boys very much like myself, very busy and loud, not naughty, just busy, you know, I can understand how you could lose your patience, right? He stopped the car, opened the back, pulled me out, set me down on the side of the road and drove away. I was little, like really, and that was incredibly traumatic for me, right? But But what I didn't realize when I started this series, that's actually what I was trying to come to terms with, being left in such a big open space. Like, imagine how terrifying that would have been, right? But trying to understand it, like, right? Does that make sense? I know this is kind of hard and sad, but I think as artists, I think that's what we do. We deal with some of the really the shitty parts. You might want to get that out of there, but the shitty parts of life, right? And we're constantly working them out, right? Trying to figure out, what's that about? What does that mean? How do I make sense of that? And what's really interesting is I'm kind of at the end of this big Earth series now. I've been doing it since 2015. That's when I first started this series. And so what's that, 6 years? I've been doing it for 6 years. And I've kind of reached the end now. Some of the newer stuff I'm doing are purely landscape, and they're just about the landscape. And because I think I've processed enough with that issue, that idea of being abandoned. And so now I'm actually looking at, okay, how can I bring that figure who's really far away in my paintings? How can I bring them like really close, but still keep the landscape? And I'm processing that. I haven't started yet. I'm still thinking about it, but it feels like a natural progression. Well, we are working again on this Art in the Garden event. It was all set up back there, and we had a stage, and so we had live music, and then we had a small kind of a artisan village. I set up, there's a building over here, and I had my gallery set up in there and had a few vendors. We served food and beer and all that kind of stuff. We just had a whole day of just celebrating art and music and being outside. Unfortunately, it was a super hot day, but it was fun. So we want to do it again. But and then we had it all videotaped and had lots of photography. So now we have all that stuff that we can use to promote it. We want to pursue that because I'm developing some new branding, and I've come up with this sort of phrase, and it has to do with create. It's create beauty, create opportunity, create community. And so, yes, I'm trying to create beauty, but in that process, I want to create opportunities for other people to explore their creativity. So whether it's at Art in the Garden, or we're going to do another part of our business, it's called We Gather. And this new building that we built is our outdoor workshop space. And we want to, we've got one pavilion, or like sort of one area that people can stay, and we want to build more of those. I have a whole sort of retreat center where people can come out here and explore creativity in a wide variety of ways. It doesn't have to be art. It can be music, it can be cooking, have chef's dinners, all kinds of things like that. So that's one project that we're working on. And yeah, so those are some projects. Last year, and again, in the middle of a pandemic, what was I thinking? I published a book. I don't know if you saw it. It's called Time to Fly. I'll show it to you. I'll get out some copies. And it's a collection. It's a poem called Time to Fly, which I wrote, and then all of the images are my paintings. So I did publish that, and I want to do some more. I want to publish more books like that. The best advice I could give to a up-and-coming artist is practice, 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 and don't compare yourself to anybody else. If they've got the passion, that's great. Everything else you can learn. Last summer, I went up to Ness Creek. I had never been there before, up in the boreal forest. It's so beautiful up there. And went to a workshop with Bonnie McNabb, and I was walking around the grounds, and I came across this area. It was just this glade where there was like a little, some water bubbling up, and it was just so cool and green and shady. And I took a picture, and I really liked it. But then when I was doing the painting, one of the things in my most recent stuff is I'm trying to describe what happens when light shines through trees, right? And so I've got, I don't know if you noticed, there's quite a few of the paintings that are part of my most recent work where that's what I'm playing with, is this. What does this light do to, and how do you describe that, right? I'm not interested in necessarily, making it photographic, but I do want it to have a sense of the place. And for me, it was this cool shadiness. And then thinking about describing, where the light is, so you have a bit of warmer colors, and then, all of the shadows are in blue. So really playing with that. And there's this one color in here. It's this blue, and it's a mix of 4 colors. And I discovered, if I mix these 4 colors, I get this really cool blue, So a lot of my work, that's what I'm doing. I'm playing with trying to understand light. Quite often it has to do with light. And where's the light coming from, and how is it hitting things, and how do I describe that with color? Then once I had the center image completed and I was happy with it, then I sort of sit with it for a while. And actually this one I didn't have to muse too long. It was pretty obvious what the border should be. It needed to be these white birch trees, that needed to be the border. And yeah, so then I did that, and then I put the frame on, and yeah.